In our new unit on two-variable statistics, we're going to start talking about something called a two-way table. And our focus at the beginning of the unit here is to basically think about data and categories of data and be able to organize the data in a way that we can answer questions about it. And a two-way table is a way of taking two categories of data and organizing it into a table with rows and columns that helps us answer those questions. So let's take a look at our first problem here. So several students are surveyed about whether they prefer writing with a pen or a pencil, and they are also asked whether they prefer lined paper or unlined paper. Some of the results are: the survey included 100 different students. 40 students said that they prefer using pen more than pencil. 45 students said they prefer using unlined paper more than lined paper. 10 students said they prefer lined paper and pen. 45 students said they prefer pencil and lined paper. There are some questions down below related to this, and let's see if we can answer those questions and if there's a way that we can kind of decipher some of this information to make it easier to answer. So the questions down below ask us how many students prefer using pencils more than pens, how many students prefer using pen and unlined paper, and how many students prefer using pencil and unlined paper. All right, so you'll notice in this situation that there are really two categories of variables here. We're talking about what they prefer to write with and what they prefer to write on. Right? So what do they prefer to write with? Either a pen or a pencil. What do they prefer to write on? Lined paper or unlined paper. So the one variable is related to pen or pencil here. And the other variable that we're talking about is related to lined paper, unlined paper. And then we've got some numbers around this. So what we do to start to figure this out and get a little bit of a visual here is we create something called a two-way table. And they organize the information from two variable categories, and sometimes it could be more, but two variable categories in rows and columns. So let's see if we can make a two-way table for this situation here. So let's go ahead and kind of separate these out. Let's make a nice little rectangle. And again, I'm going to divide it into 4 spots here because one variable was related to the type of utensil that they like to write with. So you'll notice that maybe we can choose the top for that. And so they either are going to write with pen or with pencil. And then the other variable that we're looking at, the other category, is what they prefer to write on. And we had talked about how they either are going to write on unlined paper or lined paper. So unlined or lined. So those are really the two variables, and the way that we can organize those can be helpful if we're separate those out into rows and columns. So this is what a two-way table looks like. All right, so let's take a look back at our data now in the situation. We're told that there's 100 different students. Okay, so if we look at all 4 of these categories here, we should, in the end, be coming up with 100 different students. We'll keep that in mind for now. It's not a number that we can fill in at this moment for any of the particular categories there, any of the particular rows or columns, cells, Sometimes we call those cells when we're talking about spreadsheets back in Unit 1. So let's go on the next one here and see if we can get a little bit more info here. So 40 students said they prefer using pen more than pencil. All right, so 40 students like to do pen more than pencil. So if we're thinking about where that fits here, it doesn't say whether those 40 students will be lined or unlined paper. It just says that they prefer pen more than pencil. So these two categories right here, these two cells are going to give us a total of 40. So I'm actually going to put 40 down at the bottom here, and I'm going to make some categories on the outside, or some tallies on the outside that are going to represent the total. All right, so I'm actually going to put a little outside T-chart sort of thing here. So we have 40 total for pens. So we're going to put that below the pen column down at the bottom. We're not sure how it splits out between lined and unlined paper yet, but there's 40 students that prefer pen more than pencil. And then says that 45 students said that they prefer using unlined paper more than lined paper. So if we think about that one, that's really that these two together are our unlined paper. So that's going to total up to 45. We're not sure of those unlined paper people if they prefer pen or pencil. It doesn't tell us in that, but we know that there are 45 of them that are unlined. So we can start to fill in some information here. All right, then we have 10 students that said they prefer lined paper and pen. So lined paper and pen. All right, so now that is inside of our little two-way table here. So lined paper and pen would be right down here, right? Because we have lined paper for the row and pen for the column. So that would be 10 students that liked lined paper and pen. And then 45 students said they prefer pencil and lined paper. So pencil and lined paper is going to be down in this bottom right spot in our two-way table, because lined paper and pencil, lined is in the row, pencil is in the column. Okay, so that is most of the information outside of that 100 different students. We're going to see if we can bring that in at some point. And so before I answer the questions down here, let's see if we can fill in some of the remaining values that we have here. So if we know there are a total of 40 students that prefer pen, and we know 10 prefer lined paper and pen, how many does that leave for unlined paper and pen? So doing a little subtraction there, or reverse addition, that must leave 30, because now 30 plus 10 is equal to that 40. Let's see what else we can fill in here. Going across on the unlined paper, we have 30 right here that prefer pen. So how many would then prefer pencil if we have a total of 45? So 30 plus 15 would add up to 45. So there must be 15 students that like unlined paper and pencil. All right, now we have all of the inside of our two-way table filled out. And you'll notice if we add up all of these pieces, 30 plus 15 plus 10 plus 45, that does all add up to 100. And we talked about how there's 100 total students here. So I'm actually going to put that 100 down here and tally up the rows and the columns now as well. So if I tally up my total for lined paper, 10 plus 45, it's going to give me 55 here. And again, notice 45 plus 55 is 100, so that totals up to 100 there for 45 unlined and 55 lined. And then if we look at down in the bottom, we could come up with the total for how many pencil preferring students we have. 15 plus 45 gives us 60. And again, 40 plus 60 does give us 100. So now we've kind of carefully worked through the data we have, put it into a visual format. So now let's see if we can answer the questions that we have down below. How many students prefer, let me use a highlighter here now. All right, so how many students prefer pencils more than pens? All right, so pencils more than pens. So in that case, we're looking at the total, right? We have 60 students that are preferring pencils and 40 students that prefer pens. Right? So that total, we look at the pencil column, that would be a total of 60 in the pencil column in table. How many students prefer pen and unlined paper? Okay, so pen and unlined paper is combining the two variables together. So pen and unlined paper would be that right there, right? Pen, unlined paper. So that answer is going to be 30. Actually, I'll use my green. So 30 in pen, unlined paper, cell. Remember, usually in a spreadsheet, when we talk about rows and columns, each one of these little spots in the rows and columns is called a cell. So there we have that 30. How many students prefer using pencil and unlined paper? So pencil and unlined paper. So that would be that category right there. That cell is in the pencil column and unlined paper row. So that is going to be 15 in pencil and unlined paper cell. So those are the three questions that we were asked, and we have some other data there that we could have used as well that we were not asked about. But in situations like this, it's often very helpful to organize our information into those two-way tables. And once we have all of that math kind of figured out in the table, then answering the question becomes a lot easier.